Welcome to the Lean Focus Podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories of lean transformation with your host, Damon Baker.
Hey everyone, Damon Baker here. We had some technical difficulties with my microphone while recording this episode, but the content is well worth the listen. Enjoy the show.
Martyn, when people hear lean, they picture assembly lines in manufacturing plants, not marketing. And you've admitted when you first encountered the Danaher business system back in 2008 at Tektronix that you were a detractor. But today you're known as one of the strongest advocates for lean in marketing. Can you take us back to what changed your mind?
Yeah, let me start off with a Winston Churchill quote. He once said, I like to learn, but I don't like to be taught. So it was really, for me, when my company, Tektronix, was acquired by Danaher. I went through the Danaher business systems and lean classes, and it really wasn't until I got on the manufacturing floor that I had my light bulb moment. And really what I mean by that is I started to see a manufacturing cell, and the way that Danaher taught us was really look at the manufacturing flow as a process. So the light bulb moment I had was, well, if you can take a manufacturing process, why can't you take that to a sales process, marketing process, basically any process, break it down to the finite points, look at areas for improvement, look at areas to actually reduce the process, improve it. And that was really that light bulb moment where realization that I can take this and use it to transform marketing and really start to implement everything I've learned in the class, but really as I experienced on the shop floor.
Was it the idea that what you were looking at was a process in manufacturing, so you tied that back to processes and marketing, or was there some other aspect of what you were observing on the shop floor, or what that light bulb trigger moment happened?
No, it was a really light bulb moment. And I think there's a saying that the sales and marketing isn't a problem, it's a process. I do not subscribe to marketing is a balance of art and science. Marketing is a process. And like any process, you can break it down to its constituent parts and look for ways to improving that. So that's the mindset I took when I learned that on the shop floor. I took that immediately back to my function and began to look at areas for improvement across the whole marketing value chain.
So why is it, in your opinion, that you think marketing leaders especially resist lean until they see it up close like you did?
It's quite easy. I think marketing leaders often fall into the camp of being pleasers. They put looking good above doing good. And what I mean by that is they want to appease the sales teams, the business units, the product teams, the executive leadership teams. But I take a more contrarian view of that, Damon, and I really focus on doing good, and then in the end, you look good. So many CMOs in that position, they don't want to invest the time, nor do they want to invite the scrutiny in terms of being measured for what they do, their impact to the business, down to every part of the marketing function can, should be, and ought to be managed and measured accordingly.
Looking back, do you think you starting as a skeptic shaped the way you lead transformations today? Does that enter into the companies in any way?
Yeah, I wasn't a skeptic, I was a cynic. So I've gone from a cynic to skeptic to really now to where I am right now. I'm a real advocate of this process. Reason? Because it's worked. I've now done this. I've now taken lean on all of its components from strategy development down to strategy deployment. I've done 4 successful company level lean implementations and then 12 implementations of marketing, probably of which I would say that 9 of them have been successful. So that's why I'm an advocate. So I've gone from that cynic skeptic to seeing the results that it gives me and the business, and also how we contribute to the business. That's why I'm an absolute passionate advocate of lean, not just at a company level, not just on the manufacturing floor, but basically every function within a company.
When you arrived at BMC Software, marketing wasn't driving growth. In your words, it was a service bureau or request machine full of vanity metrics and disconnected from the business. Can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, I do. And what I saw when I first arrived was a team that really had lack of vision, lack of strategy. The metrics were what I call vanity metrics that were monitored but not managed, and there was no real return on marketing investment. So, given all of that as a backdrop, it became very, very evident that the reason behind that was nobody really clearly defined the role of marketing, how it should be set up, so should be structured, how it needs to contribute to the business. So the business units, the product teams, sales, and the partner teams just saw it as a service bureau. Go and produce X, Y fold a brochure, go and produce this collateral, go and run this event without any idea of how it's impacting the business or furthering the business or driving real growth.
You have a rather interesting interview process, and I'd like to go deep into this. So you were actually able to diagnose some of these gaps prior to even joining BMC software. Can you take us through the secret sauce that you use? And I think you've done this in several other roles with that too.
Yeah, no, but before I join any company, I want to try and take a walk in the shoes of a customer. So a Gemble walk, you can call it a voice of the customer, but it really is going through a customer experience journey. And so for BMC, what I did was pretend that I was a potential customer. And I went from awareness interest, so even down to typing in some keywords, phrases that CIOs would use when they're looking at a BMC offering and or a solution. Where do we actually appear in the search ranking? How did the competition stack up against us? Then when I did get that search term or key pop up, where did it take me? Did it give me to the content I was looking for in order to make myself smarter? How was the whole experience? Did I get access to demos? Did I get access to people to follow up? I even put my name down on follow-up calls. Please have someone call me. It was, quite frankly, disappointing then. It's changed dramatically now. But then nobody called me. I also went through the same process for competitors. So that told me a number of things. That told me about the experience I was experiencing as a potential customer, also with the lens of looking at with our competitors. And from that perspective, Damon, what it enabled me to do was then to start to diagnose what was going on behind the scenes. So that's really how I arrived at that. So I had a very good view. And then before I even started interviewing, what were some of the challenges behind the scenes? And they were confirmed as I met more and more people through the interview process, and which I built up then a very comprehensive picture of some of the challenges that I would potentially inherit.
So you're describing what lean practitioners would know affectionately as a value stream. And in marketing, sometimes the word customer journey is used. So essentially, you're taking yourself through the customer journey of BMC software. And I imagine as you're doing that, you're also thinking about all of the waste that you've experienced along that process. So what did that journey reveal to you about how disconnected the marketing function had become from the customers of BMC software?
Yeah, no, even before I got behind the scenes, even the language that we were using then versus now. For instance, once I got to the website, the content I was consuming, the white papers, the blogs, the brochures, were all written from an inside-out perspective. What I mean by that is us, ours, we, leader, really speaking from a product perspective outwards. Now, a good customer-centric brand or company would always have content written from a customer's perspective, outcome, business, results, value, you, yours, even down to that vocabulary. So from the get-go, I could see we had more of an inside-out focus and strategy versus an outside-in. That then also gives me a good indication of what culture I was walking into in terms of the way that we had our mindset, the way that we thought about business, the way that we thought about projecting our business. And it was really that inside-out versus outside-in perspective.
Seems like a very simple, logical, pragmatic way of thinking about a process. So why is it, in your opinion, that marketing leaders in particular underestimate the power of experiencing their own customer journey firsthand when in fact they're the ones who design these process workflows that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. I think if it goes back to my earlier point where a lot of marketing functions and leaders fall into trying to appease too many people without doing what is right for the business. So it takes really a bold or even a fearless leader to start really having a contrarian view. And let me give an example. 2 weeks into my tenure, I plastered the wall outside of our CEO's office in Santa Clara. I papered the wall with every piece of content, collateral, web page, message, logo. And what I saw there was I can't describe it anything other than a real dog's dinner. And what I mean by that is plastered the wall. And what I wanted to do was have everyone who walks past that wall, and there's a question underneath, there was a title which said, "This is how we appear to our customer." And then a statement at the bottom of that wall saying, "Can we do better?" ? And clearly it was a little bit rhetorical. Clearly, absolutely we could. But what it illustrated was how disjointed we were in our message, our positioning, our brand. And that's how our customers experienced us. So that was really the sort of the ice bucket moment, if you will, for my team and others within BMC. That there were certainly things we were missing. We were disjointed. We were taking an inside out versus an outside in perspective, and we were missing the customer journey, presenting a clear, compelling story why we matter to that customer and what our value propositions are.
This story is not without resistance and doubt, and I know that you encountered a lot of cultural inertia along the way. You obviously didn't hesitate to take on the role, so nothing in that customer journey that you walked in yourself scared you away, so you said yes. But as you got into it, you described the resistance came hard and fast, and it came from your own team.
Yeah, there was a couple of things. When I first joined, I was welcomed open arms, saying, look, we wanted a leader. We wanted a seat at the table, the executive leadership table. We wanted a voice to represent us. We wanted structure. We wanted process. Fast forward, I gave them all of that and some, and that's when the resistance took place. So it's one of those things where careful for what you wish for. And that's when I started.
I like diet and exercise until you put me on the treadmill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want it for free. I don't want to work for it. And quite frankly, I don't want to change the way I do, change the way I think. So yeah, absolutely. I started to see that resistance very, very, very early on. So when I started shining lights on the things like that, the brand wall, the message wall outside the CEO's office, it was not being punitive. It was challenging that growth mindset, that continuous improvement mindset. Should we, could we, ought we to be better? And when you do that, you're basically challenging people's perception about themselves, the value that they bring. So my challenge, although it was never meant to be punitive, it came across as being punitive. So I saw some resistance from my own team, the leaders that started to shut down, saying, well, this guy's coming in, shining a light on all the things that are broken. And I wasn't doing it for any other reason as once you've actually understood some of the areas that requires attention and or are broken, can you fix them? So that's what the resistance had. It's human nature. And I think we all experience that. But it took a very long time to get the vision across to what we're coming to achieve and then get the people on board to actually drive that change in the end.
What I really like about your approach, and it's subtle, and if you don't pick up on sort of the intent behind it, you can kind of miss the plot. Let me explain what I'm talking about. You presented facts and information in a way that made the emotion detached or the judgment attached from why things are the way they are. So nowhere in that did you describe so-and-so created this process. How could that, how could we be such an idiot? Or how could we be so remiss and have missed all these things? And you left it open-ended and presented information in a way that forced people to embrace the reality, and the reality being the journey that our customer takes through our business.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate, and I'm sure, Damon, when you were at Danaher, we were there at the same time. But one of the leadership conferences we had a speaker called Dr. Carol Dweck, and she was the author of The Growth Mindset. And she had this notion, and I would encourage anyone to look up Carol Dweck, Growth Mindset, The Power of Yet on YouTube. It's a 10-minute video, and it talks about the power of yet, because we're all brought up at school, pass or fail. Same in business. You're either at plan or you're not, so pass or fail. She talked about the power of yet. And I use that language to make it less threatening about having stretch goals. We may be in the red, we're not at plan, we haven't hit the plan yet. And what I learned by that, Damon, is it takes away that punitive feeling that we suck, I suck, I'm not doing my job, I'm not good enough. And it provides that reassurance that, well, we know what we have to go do, but we are not there yet. And I think that was the biggest turning point of when I actually started to see people going, maybe I get this, maybe it's not as threatening as I first feared.
Can you describe, in your own words, what is a positive deviant? Seems like a paradox, like a jumbo shrimp or an honest politician. What is a positive deviant?
Yeah, very interesting. So this was the days when long time ago at an airport, flight was delayed. This is the time when they sold magazines at the news stores at airports. I picked up National Geographic, and in that, I had this really good article on positive deviance. And I'll cut this long story short. Basically, in Africa, in these villages, there was high infant mortality rates. And so what this team did was really pick out what they called the positive deviants, the females of that village who people looked up to, and trained, educate them on hygiene, fresh water, taking care of themselves, immunization. And that message spread throughout the villages. And long story short, infant mortality rates went down, the health of the mothers were better, etc., etc., etc. So I took that notion of finding the positive deviance within my organizations. And these aren't the leaders necessarily. These are the people 1, 2, 3 clicks down from the leadership teams. But they are the people you go to. They're the people in the old days of the water cooler. What's going on? Who do you know? What's going on here? What do you know? How can you help me do my job? Those are the people I focus on. It's probably a cluster of 6, 7, 8 people around my organization around the world. I use them as the change amplifiers. And if they were on board, the others would rally around very quickly. So the notion of when you do change management, 20% of the team will get it dramatically. That was a positive deviance. 60% will follow the 20, and there's 20% will never get it in a month of Sundays. That invariably was really a focus on that positive deviancy, and built the whole change program around those people that would actually get on board, could see the vision, and would actually help me convince the others that this is the path to take.
Yeah, this is a critical inflection point, the point of no return, so to speak, where you really purposely bring lean to marketing. So you committed, in your own words, to treating marketing like every other part of the business, accountable, measurable, and lean. And you even said, burn the boats, and gave the resistors no room to hide. What gave you the conviction to bet your tenure on bringing lean into marketing?
I think actually I knew no other way. So if I mentioned earlier on, I've done 4 company level lean transformations successfully, but I've done 12 marketing lean transformations, probably 9 of which have been successful. We can talk about the other 3 later, but I knew that coming into this was the only way. If we were going to be relevant as a function, relevant to our customers, to the sellers, to the channels that we actually sell through, and then also finally relevant to the business, there was no other way of doing this. In order to have a very clear strategy that aligns to the company strategy, a set of KPIs that we can manage, not monitor, and those KPIs that then cascade down into the organization, that we then review every week at our stand-ups and do a deep dive at every month, that gave me that conviction. So I had the conviction. I had no hesitancy of burning the boats. None. Zero. I did have a hesitancy of our ability to do the transformation in a timely fashion that wouldn't leave me exposed of not being able to make that change and being backed up with results and fact and data.
Did you have, let's say, a group of traditional creatives on the marketing team who maybe think of marketing, as you opened with, as this creative process that's lightning strike ingenuity? How did you make this relevant to them while not dismissing their strengths? Because I think you kind of have to have both, don't you? You have to have process rigor and the right process, but also when it comes to being creative in certain things like copy and value proposition and branding and advertising, you do want to be creative.
Yeah, again, I may take a contrarian view here, Damon. I just dislike the word creative because it almost lets somebody off the hook for being accountable and being relevant to the only real constituency that counts, and that's our customers. What I mean by that is, even if you are quote unquote creative, there is a process you go through and there are tests you take. And if you have good creative is only good if it sells something. So if you actually do the treat creative as a process and then also test and validate that creative, that position, that message, that value proposition with the customer, that's the way that I showed and demonstrated to quote the creative people that lean has a role to play even in their realms. So again, everything's a process. If everything's a process, it's open to the adoption or the usage of lean to make it even better than it is today.
Yeah, so true. I think oftentimes you see marketing firms and agencies and even ads and campaigns getting awards, and you have to wonder what was the ROI behind some of these things and what did it deliver, or was it just a quote unquote creative ad by some criteria?
Yeah, Damon, don't get me talking on marketing awards. I am absolutely passionate about awards. Don't count for anything. They're the trophies you put on the sideboard, mean nothing. The only award that I like is have we moved the needle? Have we grown the business? Have we improved the customer experience? And that's the only award that we should ever be interested in. So I never enter for any awards, period. Never have done, never will do. And that's how we run our business.
So at this point, you're building momentum, you're stacking wins, and you start to have some CEO sponsorship. So your CEO and CFO quickly become some of your biggest allies, and you deliver clearly proof points that marketing can actually operate with the same rigor as sales or operations, which, and between you and I, you knew that that was going to be the outcome, but maybe for others inside the organization, that was a big aha. What were the first visible wins that made the skeptics finally pay attention?
Yeah, so I was very consistent throughout the interview process that I would bring rigor, operational discipline, and results to the marketing function. I think everyone said, yeah, that's what we were looking to hear, and they scratch their chin sagely. But kudos to our CEO and CFO who's been nothing supportive, knowing that there'd actually be a major disruption of people, process, and everything. But the first indication that I actually was starting to get support was when I joined, there was a very large advertising campaign. I won't say what it is, but we were spending significant amount of dollars on this. We'd been in the market 4 to 6 months, I believe, when I joined. And I looked at the facts and data. I looked at the before and after funnel creation. I looked at the before and after website traffic. I looked at many, many data points, and it was very clear we were spending significant resources, but we weren't moving the needle. So we had a foot on the gas and the revs were high, but we didn't have it in gear. So it was very, very easy. I shut down that program, that campaign, was able to redeploy dynamic resource allocation, redeploy that into other areas that would generate business, manageable business. And I was also able to take a percentage of that money that we otherwise spent and able to give that back to the CFO. And then I was able to give some of that resources back into the CRO at that time and some of his direct reports in the region. So a couple of things.
Hold on. Marketing gave money back to finance and marketing gave money back to the CRO. Can you say that? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, you heard that correctly. And I think that a couple of things, Damon. I think one, that established that I was very, very earnest about removal of waste. It also showed that if we weren't moving the needle, I wouldn't spend that money. And if we weren't spending that money and I couldn't find ways to invest it in the business, I would give it back. And we did. And I think that was the realization to both the CEO and the CFO at that time, that we were serious about making a difference and that we wouldn't waste resources purely because we had the just given budget.
Yeah, you view finance as the accountability partner to validate results. And I would argue that most finance functions and marketing departments don't get along and probably don't spend a whole lot of time together. So what's different?
I mean, I would say it's that early intent. I think also we developed a reputation for being operationally rigorous. We cut out waste. And we're not constantly going back to the CFO saying we need more money. And I said to both our CFO and CEO, I will not come back to you and ask for $1 more until a couple of things. Number one, I can tell you what our return on marketing investment was. And so when I first joined, if the CFO gave me $1, I could only give him $1 back. The end of last year, I was able to give him $5 back. That indicates that we're really serious and earnest about delivering growth, delivering return on investment. So that's what really, it was proof through experience, it was proof through results, and it's proof through doing what we said we're going to do in stages of that transformation of the marketing function.
You describe a lot of marketing teams, including the one that you inherited, as being focused on looking good versus doing good. And to me, that's cultural. And now you're starting to change that culture. So in your mind, what were some of the most important levers you had to pull in order for that culture shift to happen, where people saw it the same way you did in terms of doing good versus looking good?
Yeah, I think it's you've got to stay on message. You've got to have the conviction. Employees see the world through their manager's eyes. So you got to have that power of conviction. If I'd actually stopped, if I'd waited for the rest of the organization to catch up, we would never have done it. So we dragged, initially in the early days, dragged the organization towards that lean journey. People were thinking in the back of their minds, well, I've been here a number of years. If I keep my head down, don't make eye contact, I'll probably outsmart the CMO. But that wasn't to be. We gained momentum, we made changes, we upgraded, removed people, and that people then saw the seriousness. And then we started to operationalize it. We have our every Thursday, we have our stand-ups. And then once a month, we have our monthly ops review. And our stand-ups is really review our action plans and then top-level KPIs. And every month, we look at our tier 1, tier 2 KPIs and have very, very, again, focusing only on the red. Again, that was culturally very hard for the company to do, for the marketing function to do. But that's how we run our business. So people, they've gone from the eye roll to and defensive posture of folding their arms into leaning in, knowing that this will not go away anyway soon. And that is the way that we actually justify not only our existence, but justifying how we have a positive impact to our funnel and to our growth journey as a company, not just as a function.
And now, a brief word about our podcast sponsor. Lean Focus knows that the most effective way to improve the bottom line is through lean transformation. And although lean is most often associated with manufacturing, Lean Focus successfully applies the principles of lean thinking to new business growth, innovation, supply chain, mergers and acquisitions, human resources, and beyond. To enact lean transformations, Lean Focus uses the proven tools of the Lean Focus Business System, or LBS for short. To begin your journey of transformation, pause this episode and contact a senior-level LBS expert now at leanfocus.com. Now, back to the podcast.
I want to give you an example of conviction. In your first month, you canceled 200 marketing events and stopped advertising. And in most companies, that will be career suicide for a CMO. So what gave you the courage to make that call in the first 30 days?
Well, actually, the
And
children
what are you
events,
thinking to yourself, oh shit, what am I about to do?
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. With the advertising big campaign, I stopped that within, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks of my tenure. But the events situation happened probably about 18 months into my tenure. So here's an example. And we had everyone involved in running events in the company.
And what's an event as an example?
Yeah, exactly. We had
Yeah, you didn't know
at
either.
one point we had over 300 events going on in a financial year. And so it was very, very clear. I started to do some analysis on return on marketing investment for these events. And it's showed me a number of things. Number one, most of the events we'd actually put in place never had a strategic objective, a desired outcome, certainly didn't have a return on marketing investment. So it's very, very easy to cut those ones out. So in the end, long story short, we cut out 200 of those 300 so events. And lo and behold, not a negative detriment on our sales funnel and zero impact on our sales. In fact, we came off on our strongest year in the company history, 40 plus year history, on the back and when we took those 200 events out. Again, not doing it through recklessness, doing it because there was no fact and data to justify what we were doing was the right thing to do. So we have an events governance now to make sure we are absolutely stringent on ensuring if we put $1 into an event, we get at least $5 back. Moreover, our voice to the customer tells us is we want to see less events from BMC. We want BMC to show up where we show up. We want to go to the AWS events, the Gartner events, the SAP events. That's where we expect huge BMC to show up, not on trying to get us to justify more travel to go to your specific events.
This is a classic example, in my opinion, of how people confuse activity with impact. So doing more should result in more things, but they haven't done the work that you're talking about, where they've thought through strategically the goal or the problem to be solved and how we're going to measure what winning looks like. And then at the end of the event, doing a postmortem and even asking ourselves, what was the ROI on that? How many leads did that generate? So that is a mindset change too, don't you think?
Oh, without question. I think it goes back to my original opening statement, which was looking good is sometimes easier to do than actual doing good. And I think the events was again one example of really everyone's a marketing expert. Deliver me event because whatever it solves all. It's a cure elixir for everything, and quite frankly, it's a cure elixir for very little. And as we start to transition from that legacy marketing mindset to a more contemporary, voice to the customer driven, digital centric, that's been a big journey. And the only way we've actually been able to make that journey is based upon the fact and data and going back to holding ourselves accountable for every dollar we spend of BMC money. We've got to give back $5 at least, which is the benchmark. 10 is world class. We've got a path towards 10, but that won't happen probably in the next year to 18 months. But you've got to have a return on investment, and events are really not a good return on anyone's investments, quite frankly.
Yeah, so to me, this was the tone setting point in the journey. And these cuts had zero negative top line or bottom line impact. In fact, EMC went on to have its strongest year in 40 years. So the story flipped on its head, and data trumped everybody's opinion about the impact that these events had on the business. So how did that outcome, in your mind, permanently change marketing's credibility inside of the company?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think one, we do have an equal voice at the table. We are no longer seen as the all-you-can-eat buffet or service bureau. It also, when we have a debate or even an argument, because everything's not kumbaya, it's driven by fact and data versus POV, point of view, or quite frankly, BS. I mean, you constantly hear, we've got to go do something. And when you say to drive what? To drive what outcome? Silence. So the activity driven versus outcome driven is something we've actually, I wouldn't say we've broken completely, but we've made a big dent in that philosophy. And one now that we hold ourselves accountable monthly for driving a set of KPIs we make transparent to anyone who wants to see that. We make transparent every dollar we spend, and there's nothing hidden. And that's the other beauty with Lean is if you do it well, you can justify it through the KPIs, the metrics, and it opens you up to transparency. And transparency has got to be a good thing in all functions.
So just to role play for a second, let's imagine I'm the sales leader in the old organization, pre-Martyn, pre-cultural transformation, and I came to you with this request. Hey, Martyn and team, we need a lean generation campaign because we're losing in the market against XYZ competitor. So I need you to build a campaign for us. How would that request have been handled in the old way inside of marketing?
Yeah, so we would have what I call a marketing tunnel versus a marketing funnel. The big difference is one will come in, one will pop out. There's no gates, there's no qualification. And so we did a lot of things probably not very well. So fast forward to putting in a marketing funnel, every request comes in and we have a set of gates and criteria. One, first of all, does it align with the company's strategic level and also marketing strategic objective? If the answer is no, you don't do it. If it says yes, it goes to the next stage. What outcome we were trying to drive towards? What problems are we trying to solve? We have a funnel gap in Europe. How much is that funnel gap? Talk about the outcome versus the activity. And only once we've defined and bounded the outcome, then we talk about what are the best programs to go and drive and achieve that. So, David, the original question is, we've got a marketing funnel, we have gates, and we align everything we do back to a strategic objective and a strategic outcome. This is so easy to say, and it almost sounds flippant as everyone's rolling their eyes going, look, duh. But I tell you what, it is extraordinarily hard to do and extraordinarily hard to hold the discipline when you have people banging down the door saying, I need an event here, I need to do this. And holding that level of discipline and rigor is been the toughest thing that we've done. And I think we've done a good job in being easy to work with, but at the same time holding the line on rigor and operational excellence.
In your experience in all the companies you've worked for, what percentage of them would you say had year over year marketing productivity requirements for spend in terms of ROI? So instead of just budget plus year after year, like we had $1 million budget this year, we should get a $1.2 million budget this year because the company is growing 20%, therefore spend needs to grow 20%. You can see how people can get pretty lazy. So when you're kind of looking back, did you ever encounter a situation where marketing as a department was forced to be more productive year over year with the spend?
Yeah, and guess why that happens? That happens in probably, I would say, over 50% of the organization, if not more. The reason being is marketing have not been able to articulate the value that it brings back to the business. So you're seen as a cost center. You're not seen as an investment. Fast forward, if you can show that you can get $5 back for every dollar you're given and point to the funnel growth and then the one closed business that is growing, that then actually, so we've been able to actually maintain, and if not actually during my 3 years, grow our budget because of that. And that's my challenge to all CMOs out there is you'll constantly get your either be flat, which means if you are flat year on year with inflation and cost of wages and stuff, you're going down in budget. The reason that's being is because you haven't been able to articulate the impact you make to the business. Simple as that.
Yeah. I want to shift gears to your leadership style, which you describe in your own words as Hugh Grant versus Gordon Ramsay. Can you describe what that means? I think I have an idea, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Well, actually, it's like someone asked me to describe my personality, and I said it's probably 50% Hugh Grant, the charming Englishman, and then 50% Gordon Ramsay, so throwing the hands up in the air and dropping some industrial fruity language and being highly demanding. And the reason why I say that is I read a very, very good book. It's called You're in charge, now what? And it talks about coming into a company, coming into BMC, it talks about what is your entry persona when you come into the organization. I've gone into other organizations as my Gordon Ramsay persona. This going to BMC, as I learned about the culture, as I learned about the people, as I interviewed more and more people, spoke to customers and many other people, I knew that if I came in as my Gordon Ramsay persona, I'd have anarchy, I'd have an organ rejection, and the organization would spat me out in a nanosecond. So I really had to adopt that the Hugh Grant philosophy, just a sprinkling of Gordon in there. But that really helped me really establish a little bit more credibility. I was more coaching versus directing and being belligerent. And I had that power of not yet. It's those languages and softer language to affect the change, because the culture of BMC is a very, very good culture, by the way. I'm not criticizing it. It's very, very powerful. But you've got to be able to learn to work within that culture and not be alien to that culture. So that's my two personalities. And anyone coming into any new organization, I would coach them to really look at the culture and adapt your persona to make sure you actually get the best results.
You know what's interesting about the Gordon Ramsay side of the persona is if you watch him in his shows, and I remember one, I can't remember the name of it, but he goes in and he works with a restaurant owner and he gives a lot of the tough love that you're talking about, yelling, screaming, demanding. But then quickly after, he'll pull that person aside and there is a softer Hugh Grant side of the message and why it's important and why he had to do that. Even Gordon Ramsay has a Hugh Grant side to his Gordon Ramsay side, and he balances those two things in equal proportion. But I think he knows when he has to do one or the other. And I think that's really the message you're trying to say, right? Is read the room and recognize what the culture needs at this point in time. And that could vary by individual.
Yeah, also, David, I go one step further. I also recognize some of my experiences, my grey hairs, and I've been in the industry for 40 years, so that'll give you a clue to my age. There is a generational shift too. Gordon Ramsay works with a certain generation, but Hugh Grant works better with a younger, more demographic who are more nurtured and more sort of a softer leadership approach. So again, it's adapting that persona to meet the culture and also the generational audience you have as well.
So now the transformation is really proving out, and Lean is essentially the new normal inside of the BMC software marketing department. So you've taken marketing ROI from $1 equals $1 to $5 is $1 of spend. So 5 to 1 ROI. Cut millions of waste out of the process, as we've already covered, and you've embedded, more importantly, Lean as the operating model inside of how the business runs and inside marketing. So what do you believe marketing is why do you believe that marketing is one of the most powerful places to apply Lean? Like, you're a big believer to start there, and that's a powerful place to start, which is not a commonly held perspective, to be quite honest, from my point of view.
I know no other way of actually running a business now, and it's been so ingrained in me. But I would encourage other people to look at it and work with people like yourself at Lean Focus, because what you'll be able to do is help position marketing as a competitive advantage. And because there's been that everyone quotes this Spencer Stewart, the revolving door of the CMO, the life expectancy is 2.5 years, and now probably growing to 3 years. The reason that's been a revolving door is because you haven't been able to establish credibility, and credibility through driving results, and those results are driving the top line and bottom line growth. And I think that's what Lean has given me, is the tool set, the mindset, the philosophy, the rigor to actually manage my business versus monitoring my business and managing the business to drive growth. And that's why, fingers crossed, I've been here just over 3.5 years, and we're just getting going. We are not the finished product. I do not want any listener to think, oh, he's got it all sorted. We have challenges ahead of us. We have challenges every single day. This is a journey. It will never be done, but it gives us a great foundation to show that we contribute to business, we help growth, and we also are stewards and good stewards of company's significant resources too.
How do you prevent the bungee cord effect? So at some point, Martyn will move on, maybe move to a next role. And one of the sayings that I heard back one year old boss say, Patrick from Tektronix, he said that lean is always one generation away from dying, meaning there's a leader that might be keeping a lot of this culture alive, that if he or she were to depart, you're at risk that some of these systems and these ways of thinking and the culture around all the things we've been talking about thus far starts to slowly erode. So if you're to kind of say, here are the critical things that need to be in place in marketing when we depart that have to be sustained in order to keep that culture going, what would you point your finger at?
Yeah, without question, people. So my leadership team, they've been hand-selected, hand-picked, combination from internal people and external people. They've come along with me on this journey. I've also got a lean practitioner who runs my operations. He is really basically the heart and soul of operations, established credibility very quickly. People look to him. He does training. It makes it very, very important to the individual. But I do believe that Patrick was really right with saying lean is just one step away from obsolescence. And now look, if I go ahead, time that I hang up my boots and go on to do other things, is it going to be continued? I don't know. It depends who my successor. If it's one of my team now, there's a very, very strong chance it will continue. If there's someone from the outside comes in, probably likelihood it'll get dismantled very, very quickly. And that's part of the reason why marketing has lost a lot of credibility within organizations, because that change and that lack of accountability. So a long-winded way, Damon, saying, I don't know, but uh, I would say that it's not guaranteed that will continue. It would only be guaranteed if one of my team becomes my successor and we can keep with the current team in place. If that's not the case, then all bets are off.
Keeping on that thought process, are there any key processes that the marketing team has taken ownership of that they exercise with consistency and rigor that if a new person coming from the outside would take out without understanding why they're there will give you cause for concern?
I think we're really looking at the whole model. And if you're not familiar with lean, you can look at some of the tool sets, the KPI bowlers, the action plans, the problem-solving process.
This is busy work.
It's intellectual overhead. Yeah, work. It's a big thumbprint. It's a big footprint on the organization. And does it really move the needle? And you've got to have experienced. This is something and probably in lean focused business, you probably have the same challenge. You can't read this. You can't watch a YouTube video. Lean is really adopted through experience. And that's why I've become an advocate, because I've experienced this now for the last 12, almost 15 years, and I've seen it work. So that's really why that really has got to be experienced in order to sustain that.
Yeah, I describe lean as like swimming. You can read all the books you want and watch people swim, but you ultimately got to dive in the pool and start swimming. And that's the quickest way to learn it, doing it. So now you're sharing some success inside the organization. You start to change the narrative inside the company and the industry, really. So your story really challenges, in my mind, the myth that lean is just for manufacturing. And if I were to make a David Letterman top 10 list of things I hear when I talk to prospective clients, that would be right up there as, oh yeah, we've heard about lean. It's that manufacturing thing. And they haven't had the benefit or the privilege of some of the experiences you and I have had. So how has, in your view, applying lean marketing changed the way the rest of the company sees marketing inside of BMC?
Look, I'd be frank, I don't think everyone gets it. I think that people are intellectually curious of what we're doing, think it may be a little quirky, but overall, the results speak for themselves. So we're doing something right. We've got that operational rigor that we've become known for across the whole organization. So I think it's viewed upon as a sort of a little bit of a novelty. That's Etherington and his lean religion, and they seem to be doing all the right things. I'm not sure if it's right for my business, but let them get on with it. As long as they're delivering results, we'll leave them alone. So I think that's probably the concept. But the other functions have got their own versions of it in different lights and different flavors, but probably don't call it lean, but many of the same philosophies.
You're kind of like describing that guy in the gym who we all look at and go, wow, what does he eat and how does he work out? And I'd really like to learn what he does, but then you go home and go, nah, I'm good.
It really is that, it's that you've got to have that calorie deficit. And if you don't have that, you're not going to lose weight. You can have the best membership of a New York gym, but unless you go there and put the miles in every day and you eat less and you sleep well and drink better, then you're not going to get fit. You're not going to get healthy. You're not going to drop the pounds. And then the other lesson I've learned, and this is probably my biggest example of why lean works. There is a British racing team, the British cycling team, run by a guy called Dave Brailsford. Dave Brailsford introduced to the British cycling team, I think it's back in 2008, when the Brits had never won a gold medal in the Olympics and never won a Tour de France, period. He brought in something called the aggregation of marginal gains over a continuous point in time. So what, for instance, in cycling... But what it means is you look for those marginal gains, and it's the compounding those gains will overall affect the overall performance. Fast forward, I think we've now won, probably 12 to 18 gold medals in the Olympics. We've now had 4, I think, Tour de France. Someone's going to quote me on this, but something like 4 individual winners of the Tour de France, all based on that concept. And there's another book called Atomic Habits, and in it actually references Dave Brailsford's philosophy of the aggregation of marginal gains. And in Atomic Habits, they say if you change your habits 1% every day, that works out to be something like 130%, 137% over a period of the year. So if you apply that mentality to not only your personal life, but apply that 1% gain every single day in a process or in your own function, imagine what that will be in year 1, year 2, year 3 with compounding. So that's hopefully able to draw a outside view of why lean and this notion of constant improvement works not only just for marketing, for businesses, but British cycling teams and also individual if you want to get fitter, faster, and more lightweight.
Sounds a lot like a 6-letter K word that you and I know really well.
Yeah.
Kaizen. So I'm going to test your marketing skills on the spot. Martyn, you ready?
Yep.
So you have to create demand for lean in marketing. How would you market lean to other CMOs out there who may be listening to this conversation now or in the future?
Yeah. 2 words to 3 words, results and job security. The first one leads to the second one.
Brilliant. Martyn, your journey is proof that lean principles don't stop at the plant floor. They belong in marketing, they belong in sales, they belong in HR, anywhere where work is to be done, quite frankly. And you've shown how the same rigor that drives quality and speed in manufacturing can also transform a marketing function into a true growth engine that the company can rely upon. Where can people who are listening to this conversation connect with you or follow your work that's going on at EMC?
Certainly from LinkedIn. I do share a lot of my thoughts and views publicly. Also, the things that don't go well. I think you get to my stage in my career, you get a lot more confidence in showing what doesn't work. And boy, in lean, you can make a lot of mistakes. And I'm willing to share those purely because I want to illustrate that it is a journey. It's not linear. And there are certainly peaks and troughs. So, LinkedIn is the best way, or just IM me on LinkedIn if you want to learn more. And certainly we'll talk to you about my experiences, but also partnering with Lean Focus as well. I've done that now 3 times across 2 companies. So I'm happy to do that too.
Thank you so much again, Martyn, and thank you for your kindness and, of course, your partnership over the years. For everyone listening, if you think lean doesn't apply to your function, Martyn's story is living proof that it does. Share this with a colleague who you still thinks lean is just for the factories. And as always, stay focused, stay lean.
Thank you for listening to the Lean Focus podcast with host Damon Baker. Please subscribe to this podcast to be notified when a new episode is available. And please consider leaving a 5-star review to support our guests while helping us to spread the word about the power of lean thinking. Until next time.